Yes, hello. This is Josh Turum over at Hickey and Turum. Specialize in the workers' compensation and personal injury areas, and I'm going to talk with you today about the benefit calculation in these claims. We have a lot of questions surrounding, how's my claim paid, and what can I get? How do I get this? Those sorts of questions. And I just wanted to do a refresher as far as the benefits that can be claimed under the Wisconsin Workers' Compensation Act, um, and kind of how those benefits are paid. So there's really, when you're looking at benefit calculation, there's more times than not, there are these four, I call them buckets, where you look to see, okay, do we have claims in one, two, three, or all four of these? And the four are: number one, lost wages, or what's called temporary total disability. Two is permanent partial disability. It's a percentage of disability that's assigned by the doctor. Three is what's called loss of earning capacity or vocational retraining. And then fourth and finally are medical expenses. And so again, you can have, or an injured worker can have one, two, three, or all four of these claims. It just depends on the claim and it depends on what has happened. I'm going to just go through, like I said, each one of them so you just have kind of a general idea. But before I do that, I'd also like to just remind everybody that the one question we get all the time when it comes to the calculation of benefits is there pain and suffering in my Wisconsin workers' compensation case? And the answer to that is unfortunately no. We don't have pain and suffering in the Wisconsin Workers' Compensation Act. There's a reason and rationale for that. I'll certainly go over that probably at a future podcast, but there is no pain and suffering in a workers' compensation matter. These are the four claims, more or less, that someone can bring if they come into play. So again, quickly, let's start with temporary total disability. Temporary total disability is what's paid when someone is out of work or missing time from work as a result of their work injury. So either the treating doctor, has the injured worker off of work completely because they're healing from the injury, or the injured worker has restrictions that are prohibiting them from returning to work. So the employer doesn't have work within those restrictions. And if that's the case, and workers' comp is voluntarily paying the case, or they're conceding the case, they pay two-thirds of the average weekly wage tax-free. So all payments that you receive from the workers' compensation carrier in Wisconsin will be tax-free. You never pay taxes on any amount that you receive from workers' comp. So again, that's how that benefit is calculated. So if you're off a week of work, 2 weeks, a month, a year, you're paid at that two-thirds of your average weekly wage tax-free for the time that you're out and you're missing from work. Second benefit is permanent partial disability. And this comes into play when an injured worker gets to end of healing, or what's called maximum medical improvement. And the doctor says they're as good as they're going to be. There's nothing else that can be done to make the condition any better, or to get us, in an improvement sort of thing. There's stuff that can be done to maintain the current condition, but not to improve it any further. And that's when we get to this percentage of disability. And there are what are called statutory minimum percentages of disability, where we look at our law or our statute and it says, yep, for this injury or this surgery, this is the percentage of disability that's assigned. And then a lot of them are also completely subjective. So the doctor is looking at the person's range of motion and their ability to do things and says, well, based on this, they have X percentage of disability to this body part. And we take that percentage, we calculate it by the permanent partial disability rate for the year of the injury, and it spits out a value for us in terms of what that is. So again, to recap, lost wages or temporary total disability. Number two would be permanent partial disability at end of healing. Third is what's called loss of earning capacity retraining benefits. Loss of earning capacity comes into play, and retraining, I should say, if you have permanent restrictions that prevent you from returning to the job that you were working at the time of injury. So if you're working somewhere and you have this injury and it's permanent, and now you have permanent restrictions and you can't go back to doing the sort of thing that you were doing before, we can talk to what's called a vocational expert to say, okay, if this injured worker has to go into the open labor market and find a new job with these permanent restrictions, do they sustain a loss? Meaning, can they compete for the same sorts of jobs they were competing at before the injury ever happened? And if the vocational expert agrees that there is a loss, that equates to a value. We move that forward. Additionally, or potentially to substitute that, we can recommend or put somebody into what's called a vocational retraining program where we say, yep, look, you have these permanent restrictions. You can no longer do the job that you were doing before. So now we want to get you into a retraining program where you complete some sort of schooling that will ultimately allow you to compete for jobs at the same wage that you were earning at the time of injury. So that's a good option as well. So loss of earning capacity or vocational retraining is our third benefit. Again, quick recap, permanent partial disability, the second, and the first was temporary total disability or lost wages. Last one's very self-explanatory, medical expenses. Obviously, if you sustain an injury at work, especially if it's a significant injury, you're going to have some medical costs. You're going to have to go see the doctor. Those costs can get quite significant. So we want to make sure that if there are any outstanding bills or any out-of-pocket medical expenses or any amounts paid by a health insurance carrier, that those all get reimbursed and paid by the workers' compensation carrier. So those are the main four. There are some, other sorts of penalty claims, other sorts of things that can come into play, but majority of the time you're looking at those big four. And just another reminder, no pain and suffering under the Workers' Compensation Act in Wisconsin. So if you have additional questions about benefits, what the claims are, what can I do, what can't I do, by all means, reach out. Really appreciate you listening. And again, any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.